The lot smelled of rust, gasoline, and wet asphalt. Behind a chain-link fence stood a cage, its bars bent in places, paint peeling, metal spotted with years of rain. Inside, a massive dog paced, muscles coiled tight beneath a mangy coat. His eyes glowed amber in the fading daylight, and every few steps he growled low, deep enough to rattle the air. People passing on the sidewalk gave wide berth, whispering warnings to their children. Everyone knew this dog, the dangerous stray that the police had locked away. Everyone said he was a monster that deserved to be put down. Jack Miller stood across the street, his hands shoved into the pockets of his threadbare coat. His beard was wild, his hair tangled, his jeans worn thin at the knees. Most days, nobody even saw him. He was invisible, just another homeless man drifting along the city's forgotten corners. But today, his eyes locked on the dog. Something in the animal's restless pacing, the tense curve of his back, reminded him of himself, caged, judged, left to rot. A group of teenagers tossed rocks toward the cage and laughed when the dog lunged at the bars, snarling. Jack's jaw tightened. A police cruiser pulled up. Officer Daniels stepped out, tall, uniform crisp. Expression set in that permanent scowl of someone who had stopped believing in second chances. He waved the kids off with a warning growl, then glanced at Jack. "Careful there," he said. "That thing's dangerous. Nearly tore its last owner apart. Animal control's got 1 week. If no one claims him, they're putting him down." The words hit Jack like a stone. He looked back at the dog, whose eyes were no longer burning with rage, but with something else. Fear, pain, a silent plea no one else noticed. The crowd that had gathered murmured among themselves. "About time they get rid of it," one man said, shaking his head. "Monster like that doesn't deserve another chance." A woman clutched her purse tighter, pulling her little girl close. "Stay away, honey. Bad dog." The little girl nodded nervously. The dog pressed its nose to the bars, breath steaming in the cool air. But nobody dared get closer, except Jack. He stepped forward, ignoring the startled looks. His boots crunched gravel as he approached the fence. The dog's ears flicked, its growl rising. But Jack didn't flinch. He understood that sound. "Easy there, buddy," Jack whispered, voice rough but soft. His hand hovered near the chain link, never touching. "You're just scared, aren't you? Not bad. Just scared." The dog snarled louder, pressing against the bars, testing the rusted steel. Officer Daniels snorted. "Don't waste your breath, pal. That thing ain't savable. You'd have to be out of your mind to take him in." Jack glanced over his shoulder. "What happens if nobody does?" Daniels didn't blink. "End of the week he's gone. Simple as that." The casual tone twisted in Jack's gut. Simple. As if a life, any life, was that disposable. Jack backed away slowly, heart pounding. He knew that fear, that desperation. He had worn it himself, nights on the street, with nowhere to go, nobody willing to look him in the eye. The dog's growl faded as Jack retreated, its amber gaze locked on him until he turned the corner. That night, Jack lay on his cardboard mat under the bridge, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dog's face pressed against the bars. The sound of that low growl echoed in his ears, not as a threat, but as a cry for help. Morning came harsh and gray. Jack scavenged for breakfast half a bagel from a trash bin, a cup of coffee someone had abandoned on a ledge. He ate quickly, shivering in the chill. But the thought of the dog gnawed at him more than hunger. All day, He wandered the city, searching through alleys and cans, until his hands closed on crumpled bills and loose change. $6, then 10. By nightfall, he had nearly 20. It wasn't much, but in his world, it was everything. He shoved the money deep in his pocket and whispered to himself, "One more day." By the third day, word of the dog had spread. A local paper printed a small story. Aggressive stray, scheduled for euthanasia. It only made people more certain that the animal was doomed. At the lot, more gawkers came to jeer. Some threw scraps of food that never reached the cage. Others recorded videos, laughing as the dog lunged. Officer Daniels watched from his cruiser, sipping coffee, indifferent. Jack stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching his pockets, feeling the weight of every coin. $28. Not enough. He would need more. He would have to find a way. Jack tried everything. He washed windshields at intersections, begged quietly outside a diner, even collected empty bottles for deposits. Every cent he earned, he tucked away, refusing to spend it on himself. At night, he went hungry, his stomach aching, but his mind fixed only on the dog. Each time he returned to the lot, the animal's eyes followed him. The growls were softer now, more questioning than threatening. Once, when no one was looking, Jack whispered through the fence, "Hold on, boy. Just hold on. I'm coming." For the first time, the dog didn't bare its teeth. By the fifth day, Jack had scraped together nearly $80. Still short. He counted the bills and coins on the sidewalk, his hands trembling with exhaustion. Behind him, a stranger scoffed. "What are you doing, old man? That mutt ain't worth it. They'll put him down and good riddance." Jack shoved the money back into his pocket, ignoring the taunt. Worth. That word cut deep. People said the same about him, that he wasn't worth saving, worth trusting, worth seeing. But someone once had, and it had saved him. He couldn't let this dog die without knowing the same. On the sixth day, the rain came. Heavy sheets battered the city, flooding gutters and soaking cardboard shelters. Jack stumbled to the lot, drenched and shivering. The dog lay curled in the cage, its fur plastered, eyes dull with resignation. For the first time, it didn't rise to growl. Jack pressed his hands against the cold chain link. "Don't give up on me," he whispered fiercely. "Just one more day. I swear." The dog blinked slowly, its chest rising in a weary sigh. Jack backed away, heartbreaking. Tomorrow would be the last chance. Tomorrow, it was life or death. That night, Jack scavenged harder than ever. He searched dumpsters behind restaurants, begged for spare change outside convenience stores, even braved the risk of busier streets where police often shooed him away. His body ached, soaked, and cold, but he didn't stop. By dawn, he had scraped together just over $100. It was all he had, every cent of his survival. He clutched the wad of damp bills in his fist like a lifeline. Today was the day. Today, he would try. At the lot, Officer Daniels leaned against his cruiser, clipboard in hand. "Today's the day," he announced to the small crowd. If no one claims him, Animal Control takes him at noon. He scribbled something, then glanced up. "Not that anyone's crazy enough," the crowd murmured in agreement. The dog stood weakly, growling half-heartedly at the gawkers. Jack stepped forward, dripping rain, clutching his wad of bills. "I'll take him," he rasped. Silence fell. Daniels blinked. "What did you say?" Jack held out the money with shaking hands. "He's mine. I'm buying him. Today." Laughter erupted from the crowd. "The bum wants the beast," someone jeered. Another cackled. "Give it a week, and the mutt will eat him alive." Jack ignored them, eyes fixed on Daniels. The officer frowned. "You don't even have an address. You can't register ownership without a place to live." Jack's voice cracked but held. "Then register him to me anyway. I'll figure out the rest. Just don't kill him." His hands trembled as he pushed the money forward. It was crumpled, damp, dirty, but it was real. It was all he had. Daniel stared, his jaw working. The crowd waited, eager for him to laugh in Jack's face. But instead, the officer sighed heavily. "You're insane." He took the bills, counting them with a grimace. "Fine. On paper, he's yours. But if that thing tears you apart, don't say I didn't warn you." He signed the form, then unlocked the cage. The gate screeched open, the dog stepping back, growling low. Jack stood frozen, heart pounding. This was it, the moment everyone expected to end in blood. The dog lunged forward, not at Jack, but at the open air. Its teeth flashed, snapping inches away. The crowd gasped, ready to cheer his death. Jack didn't move. He stood his ground, hands loose at his sides, eyes steady. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dog snarled, circling, hackles raised. Jack stayed still, only his chest rising with calm breaths. Slowly, impossibly, the growl softened. The dog stopped, amber eyes locked on Jack's. For the first time, there was no rage, only confusion. Jack crouched, his knees popping, the damp ground soaking into his jeans. He extended a hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. "You're free now," he whispered. "But if you'll let me, I'll be your friend." The crowd snickered. "He's dead meat." "Wait for it." The dog sniffed the air, lip curled, then inched closer. Jack held his breath, every muscle taut. The animal's nose brushed his fingers, then jerked back. Another pause, another sniff. Finally, the dog licked the dirt from his palm. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Jack's heart soared, but he didn't move. "That's it," he murmured. "You're not a monster. You're just hurt." The dog lowered its head slightly, ears flicking back. Its body still trembled with tension, but the fire in its eyes dimmed. Jack slowly placed his hand on the animal's head, fingers sinking into wet fur. The dog shivered, then pressed into the touch. The crowd erupted with disbelief. "Impossible! He's going to regret that!" But Jack only smiled through tears, his hand steady on the creature's head. Officer Daniels shook his head. "You're either the bravest fool I've ever seen, or the luckiest." Jack looked up, voice steady. "Not luck. Just seeing what no one else wanted to." The dog leaned against him, massive frame, heavy but warm. For the first time in years, Jack felt something he thought was gone forever: trust. Fragile, trembling, but real. He slipped the makeshift rope around the animal's neck. The dog didn't fight. Instead, it followed as Jack stood, towering over him like a shadow that finally chose a home. The crowd parted, murmuring, jeering, shaking their heads. Dead by morning. Crazy old bum. Jack ignored them all. He walked slowly, the dog at his side, their steps awkward but together. Rain soaked them both, but neither seemed to notice. Jack whispered, "We'll figure it out, boy. Just you and me." The dog's ears twitched, and for the first time since anyone could remember, its tail gave the faintest wag. The city saw a madman leading a beast. But Jack saw something else, a broken man and a broken dog, taking their first steps toward healing, side by side. The first night was the hardest. Jack led the dog, who still hadn't earned a name, beneath the overpass where he usually slept. The rain had turned the ground into mud, his cardboard mat already soggy. The dog circled warily, growling low whenever Jack moved too close. Jack sat down slowly, unwrapping the stale loaf of bread he had saved. He tore it in half and slid one piece across the ground. "Here," he said quietly. The dog sniffed it, teeth bared, but hunger won. He devoured the bread in seconds, then eyed Jack with suspicion. Trust was still miles away. Jack didn't sleep much. Each time he shifted, the dog growled, hackles raised. Jack kept his movements slow, whispering reassurances into the dark. "It's okay, boy. Nobody's gonna hurt you now." The city hummed above them, traffic, sirens, the occasional shout. But down here, it was just man and beast, circling each other like wary shadows. At dawn, Jack stretched stiffly, his stomach gnawing with hunger. The dog stood watch, eyes glowing faintly in the early light. For the first time in years, Jack didn't feel completely alone. The days that followed tested them both. Jack scrounged food where he could half-eaten sandwiches from trash bins, leftover fries from a diner tray. Whatever he found, he split evenly. At first, the dog snatched the food and retreated, but gradually, he began eating closer, sitting a few feet away instead of at the edge of the shadows. Jack never forced it. He simply waited. One afternoon, as Jack handed him a crust of bread, the dog took it gently from his hand instead of snapping. It was a small thing, but to Jack, it was a victory worth more than gold. Word spread quickly. People saw Jack walking the city streets with a massive dog trailing beside him. Murmurs followed them everywhere. "That's the monster from the cage. He's insane. It'll rip his throat out." Mothers pulled children closer. Shopkeepers shooed them away. Jack ignored it all. The dog's presence alone gave him space. For the first time in years, no one tried to shove him aside or spit at his feet. Fear gave him room to breathe. But it wasn't respect. Not yet. That would have to be earned. One evening, Jack sat by the river, tossing stones into the water. The dog sat a few feet away, head tilted, watching the ripples. Jack finally spoke aloud. "You need a name." He studied the dog's scarred muzzle, the way it bore the world's judgment, yet still stood strong. "How about Ranger?" The dog flicked his ears but gave no other sign. Jack chuckled. "Ranger it is." For the first time, he felt the bond settle. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Trouble found them soon enough. A group of teenagers spotted Jack behind a grocery store, digging through discarded crates. "Hey, look," one sneered. "It's the bum with his killer mutt." They closed in, laughing cruelly, one kicking over Jack's meager pile of bottles. Jack stood tall, shielding Ranger. "Leave it," the biggest boy smirked. "What if we don't?" He stepped forward, raising a hand, but Ranger's growl split the air, low and rumbling, teeth flashing white. The teens froze, bravado draining. One muttered, "Screw this," before they bolted, tripping over each other in their hurry. Jack rubbed Ranger's head. "Good boy." That night, Jack couldn't stop smiling. Ranger had protected him not out of fear, not out of command, but choice. The dog lay beside him under the bridge, head resting on its paws. Jack whispered into the dark, "Guess it's you and me now." The dog sighed deeply, eyes closing. For the first time since he had taken him from the cage, Jack reached out, and laid a hand on Ranger's side. The dog didn't flinch. He simply breathed steady, and Jack drifted into the most peaceful sleep he'd known in years. Days turned into weeks. Ranger's coat grew shinier with better scraps, his ribs less visible. Jack noticed the way the dog began watching him closely, following his every step. When Jack sat, Ranger Saturday. When Jack moved, Ranger moved. Their lives wove together. Two threads once frayed, now bound tight. But not everyone was convinced. Officer Daniels spotted them one afternoon and pulled his cruiser to the curb. "Still alive, huh?" he muttered. "I'll admit, I didn't think you'd last." Jack shrugged. "He just needed someone to believe in him," Daniels frowned. "Or maybe you got lucky." Jack didn't argue. He didn't care what Daniels thought. But that night, he replayed the officer's words. Was it luck? He looked at Ranger, curled against his side, and shook his head. No. This was trust, earned slow, fragile, but real. He whispered, "You're more than they think you are, just like me." Ranger's tail thumped faintly against the concrete, as if agreeing. The city remained hostile. Shopkeepers slammed doors when they approached. Children pointed and whispered. Once, a man shouted, "That mutt should have been put down." Jack's fists clenched, but he said nothing. Ranger's ears flattened, sensing his anger. "Easy, boy," Jack soothed. "We don't need their approval." Still, each insult cut deep. He remembered nights when people had said the same about him. Worthless, dangerous, better off gone. But every time Ranger pressed close, Jack felt the strength to keep walking. One morning, Jack woke to find Ranger gone. Panic surged through him. He stumbled through alleys, calling hoarsely, "Ranger! Ranger!" Hours passed before he found the dog outside a bakery, sitting patiently. A loaf of bread lay on the ground, dropped by a frightened clerk who had tried to chase him off. Jack grabbed Ranger's collar, relief overwhelming him. "Don't do that again," he whispered. Ranger licked his hand as if to apologize. Jack tore the bread in half and shared it with him. "Guess we're both thieves now," he chuckled. Their bond deepened. Jack began talking to Ranger as though he were human, telling him stories of his past. He spoke of days when he had a job, a home, and a family who had drifted away when life collapsed. Ranger listened, head tilted, eyes steady. "You don't judge," Jack murmured. "That's why I trust you." Each word was a piece of himself he hadn't shared in years. The more he spoke, the lighter he felt, as though Ranger's presence alone was pulling him out of the pit he had been trapped in. But danger loomed. Ranger's former owner returned. Jack first spotted him outside a liquor store, pointing and muttering angrily. Word spread fast, a man claiming the dog was his, demanding it back. Jack's gut twisted. He knew this day might come. The man reeked of alcohol and rage, his voice carrying down the street. "That mutt's mine! You stole him!" People stared, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Officer Daniels intervened, separating them, but the man spat on the ground. "This ain't over," Ranger growled low, pressing against Jack's leg. The battle for trust had just become a battle for survival. That night, Jack barely slept. Every creak and whisper in the dark set him on edge. Ranger lay close, ears pricked, muscles tense. Jack stroked his fur gently. "They won't take you," he promised. "Not while I'm breathing." Ranger shifted, laying his heavy head on Jack's chest. The weight was grounding, anchoring him against the storm brewing outside. For the first time in years, Jack had something worth fighting for, and something that would fight for him. The confrontation escalated days later. The men cornered Jack in an alley, fists clenched. "Give him back," he snarled. "He's mine." Jack stood his ground, voice steady. "You chained him, starved him, beat him. You don't own him. Not anymore." The man lunged, but Ranger leapt forward, teeth bared, forcing him back. The man stumbled, terror flashing across his face. Officer Daniels arrived just in time, dragging him away in cuffs for outstanding warrants. "Looks like justice finally caught up," Daniels muttered. Jack scratched Ranger's neck, whispering, "Good boy, you're free now." The city began to notice. When Ranger pulled Jack away from a mugger in the park, people saw. When he guarded a lost child until police arrived, people saw. Whispers shifted from fear to awe. Maybe that dog's not so bad. Maybe the bum knew what he was doing. Respect was still fragile, but it was growing. Jack didn't seek it. All he cared about was the steady weight of Ranger's loyalty beside him. But deep inside, he felt pride blooming, a warmth he hadn't known in years. One afternoon, Jack sat outside the library watching families pass. Ranger lay at his feet, calm and alert. A little girl approached timidly, clutching a book. Her mother gasped, pulling her back, but Ranger only wagged his tail softly. Jack nodded. "It's okay. He won't hurt you." The girl reached out with trembling fingers. Ranger sniffed, then licked her hand gently. The mother's eyes widened, but she smiled faintly. "Thank you," she whispered, before leading her daughter away. Jack grinned. "See that? You're changing minds, Ranger. One person at a time." That night, as they lay beneath the stars, Jack spoke softly. "They don't laugh as much anymore. They don't spit. They're starting to see you for what you are." Ranger shifted closer, tail thumping against Jack's leg. "And maybe they'll see me too." He closed his eyes, warmth spreading in his chest. For once, the city didn't feel so cold. Weeks passed, and Jack found himself standing taller, speaking clearer. With Ranger at his side, he no longer felt invisible. He wasn't just a shadow drifting through alleys. He was a man with purpose. Each day brought new challenges: hunger, cold, suspicion, but also new victories. A smile from a stranger, a nod from a shopkeeper, a pat on Ranger's head from a brave child. Every small moment stitched together a new life, fragile but real. Still, Jack knew the road ahead wasn't smooth. Shadows of the past lingered, and the city's judgment didn't vanish overnight. But as he lay with Ranger curled against him, he felt a strength he hadn't in years. Together, they had built trust where none existed. Together, they faced scorn, hunger, and fear. And together, they had begun to change not only themselves, but the world around them. Jack whispered into the night, "We're not done yet, boy. This is just the beginning." Ranger's soft sigh was his answer. The city had started to soften toward Jack and Ranger, but true acceptance still felt far away. Whispers of doubt followed them. "It's just a matter of time before that dog snaps." People remembered too easily the stories of his past, and too slowly the moments he had saved lives. Jack ignored it, but he knew only something undeniable, something everyone could see with their own eyes, would change hearts completely. That test came one hot summer afternoon, when the air itself seemed heavy with tension and the streets buzzed with restless energy. Jack and Ranger wandered near a row of old apartment buildings. Children played in the cracked sidewalks while parents watched from stoops. The smell of grilled food drifted through the air, mixing with car exhaust. Ranger lay in a patch of shade, tongue lolling, while Jack searched trash bins for recyclables. It was almost peaceful, a rare moment of calm. Then, in a blink, chaos erupted. A shout pierced the air, then smoke. Thick, black smoke poured from a second-story window. Someone screamed, "Fire!" Panic spread like the flames themselves, tearing through the neighborhood. People rushed in all directions, shouting for water, for help, for someone to call 911. Jack bolted upright, eyes locked on the burning building. Flames licked out of the windows, roaring louder each second. And then he heard it, a child's cry. A little girl appeared at the upstairs window, face streaked with soot, coughing violently. Her mother shrieked from the street, clawing at neighbors who held her back. "My baby! Someone get my baby!" But the stairs were already engulfed in fire, the front door glowing red-hot. No one dared step forward. Everyone froze. Everyone but Ranger. The dog surged to his feet, body taut with focus, ears pinned forward. Jack's breath caught. He understood instantly what Ranger intended. "No, boy, wait!" But Ranger was already charging, muscles propelling him toward the fire. Jack stumbled after, heart slamming, shouting, "Let me through!" The crowd gasped as the dog barreled past, disappearing into the smoke-filled doorway. The mother wailed, collapsing to her knees. Neighbors shook their heads. "He'll never make it." But Jack, chest heaving, whispered fiercely, "Yes, he will." Seconds stretched into eternity. The building groaned under the strain of fire. Windows shattered, spraying glass across the street. The little girl at the window had vanished from sight. People clutched each other, weeping. Then movement. A dark shape burst through the smoke. Ranger. His coat was singed, paws bleeding. But in his jaws he carried the girl by her shirt, careful, unyielding. Her tiny arms clutched his neck instinctively, face pressed into his fur. The crowd erupted into shouts, half disbelief, half wild cheers. The mother screamed her child's name and stumbled forward. Jack was there to meet them. He scooped the girl from Ranger's mouth and cradled her against his chest, coughing from the smoke but alive. She sobbed into his shirt, and he murmured, "You're safe now, sweetheart. You're safe." The mother collapsed against him, clutching her daughter, tears streaming down her soot-stained cheeks. "Thank you, thank you." Jack shook his head, voice hoarse. "Don't thank me. Thank him." He turned to Ranger, who stood panting, eyes blazing, body trembling with exhaustion but alive. The crowd followed his gaze, their eyes widening with awe. For a moment, silence ruled. Then applause. Loud, thunderous applause. Neighbors who had once crossed the street to avoid Jack now clapped, shouted, cheered his dog's name. "Ranger! Ranger!" The chant grew, echoing off brick walls, drowning out the crackle of flames. Jack knelt beside Ranger, stroking his singed fur, whispering, "You did it, boy. You proved them wrong." Ranger licked his hand weakly, tail wagging despite the burns. In that moment, every doubt, every cruel word, every jeer faded into nothing. Firefighters arrived, rushing past with hoses and axes. But the true rescue had already been made. Paramedics knelt beside the girl, checking her lungs, then praised Ranger in disbelief. One firefighter crouched, shaking his head. "I've seen trained canine seconds freeze up in fire, but this dog, he's a hero." Jack looked down at Ranger, pride swelling so strong it ached. For the first time in years, he stood taller, chest out, shoulders squared. He wasn't just a bum anymore. He was the man who saved a hero, and together they had saved a life. News spread like wildfire. By nightfall, local stations ran footage of the rescue. Headlines blared. Homeless man's dog saves child from fire. Images of Jack and Ranger covered screens. The pair bathed in smoke and sweat, eyes fierce, unyielding. Reporters swarmed, but Jack kept his words simple. He's not a monster. He never was. He just needed someone to believe in him. Ranger sat at his side during every interview, tail thumping gently, as though he understood the attention was for him. The community transformed. Where once there had been scorn, now there was respect. Shopkeepers who had slammed doors now offered food and water. Strangers stopped Jack in the street, thanking him, petting Ranger, snapping photos. Donations poured in money, clothes, even offers of housing. Jack accepted only what they truly needed. "We're not here for handouts," he told reporters. "We're here to prove no one is beyond saving. Not a dog, not a man." His words spread further than he ever imagined. Officer Daniels approached them one evening outside the precinct. His usual scowl was gone, replaced by something softer respect. "You proved me wrong, Miller," he admitted. "That dog, he's more than I thought, and maybe you are too." He extended a hand. Jack hesitated, then shook it firmly. "It wasn't about proving you wrong. It was about proving him right." Ranger barked once, tail wagging. Daniels chuckled. "Fair enough." Opportunities followed. An animal shelter offered Jack a position as a caretaker. At first, he refused, but Ranger nudged his hand insistently, as if to say it was time. Jack accepted, spending his days helping other dogs who had been abandoned, feared, forgotten. He whispered to them, as he had whispered to Ranger, "You're not monsters. You're just hurt." Slowly, the shelter filled with wagging tails and second chances. Ranger thrived. His coat grew glossy, his muscles strong again. But more than that, his spirit shone. Children came to the shelter just to see him, running their hands through his fur, listening wide-eyed to the story of the fire. He became a symbol of hope, proof that even the most feared could become the most loved. Jack often watched, smiling quietly. He didn't need the spotlight. Seeing Ranger safe, happy, and loved was more than enough. One evening, Jack sat outside the shelter, the sun setting in streaks of gold and crimson. Ranger lay beside him, head on his lap, tail thumping lazily. Jack stroked his fur, voice soft. "Remember when nobody believed in you? When they wanted you gone?" Ranger huffed, as though remembering. Jack chuckled. "Look at you now. You're a hero. And me? Maybe I'm not invisible anymore." His voice cracked slightly. "Maybe we both got saved." The little girl Ranger had rescued often visited. She would run up, throwing her arms around his neck, whispering secrets into his ears. Ranger always listened, calm and gentle. Her mother brought food and blankets, insisting on helping. "You saved my family," she told Jack once. "We'll never forget." Jack shook his head. "He did the saving. I just gave him the chance." The woman's eyes softened. "Sometimes that's all anyone needs." Months passed. Jack and Ranger became fixtures of the neighborhood. Where people once crossed the street, now they waved, offered greetings. Children shouted Ranger's name, and adults nodded respectfully to Jack. It wasn't wealth, it wasn't fame, but it was dignity. something Jack thought he'd lost forever. Together, they had reclaimed it. Together, they had built a new life. But Jack never forgot where they started. He still walked the alleys, still spoke to the homeless he once shared nights with. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes just a kind word. And always, Ranger walked beside him, a reminder that no one was beyond redemption. "They don't see you, do they?" Jack would murmur to the others. "But I do, and if he and I can climb out, so can you." His presence gave them hope, a flicker of light in the dark. The shelter grew under Jack's care. Donations poured in, volunteers came, and soon it became more than just a building. It became a place of healing for animals, for people, for Jack himself. He often thought back to that first night under the bridge, when Ranger growled at every movement. Now, he watched the dog sleep peacefully beside children, tail twitching in dreams. The transformation was more than survival. It was redemption, raw and undeniable. On a quiet autumn night, Jack walked Ranger through the park. Leaves crunched underfoot, the air crisp. People greeted them warmly, some stopping to thank him again. Jack smiled, but his eyes were on Ranger. "You did it, boy. You changed them. You changed me." Ranger bumped his head against Jack's leg, tail wagging. Jack chuckled, blinking back tears. "Guess we saved each other." The words hung in the cool air, true and unshakable. They stopped at the riverbank, where city lights shimmered on the water. Jack sat, Ranger curling close, warm and steady. He whispered, "We're not monsters, we're survivors, and now we're family." Ranger's tail swept the ground, eyes closing as he rested his head in Jack's lap. The night wrapped around them, peaceful, forgiving. Once, the world had written them both off, but together they had proven it wrong. And as long as they had each other, neither would ever be caged again.